Welcome to the self-healing revolution where ancient wisdom and modern science meet. I am your host, Paige Pierman, owner of Love Yourself, an Ayurvedic and integrative wellness center based in Louisville, Kentucky, where I offer coaching, courses, and retreats. I put together this summit after working in my own practice for a while. I've realized as I've been working with my clients over the years that it's taken many times people to look at many different modalities and work with many mentors and guides along the way. So it's my hope with this summit, you'll learn 3 things to biohack your body, master your mind, and elevate your soul. And today I'm so excited to introduce you to Eileen. Hold on. We've had some tech issues this morning, but hold just a second. Eileen Day McKusick is a pioneer in the fields of the human biofield, therapeutic sound, and electric health. A researcher, author, inventor, educator, speaker, and practitioner, Eileen has been researching health since 1987, and specifically how sound impacts health since 1996. She is the originator of the sound therapy method, Biofield Tuning, with thousands of students trained worldwide since 2010. The founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute and the author of the best-selling books, Tuning the Human Biofield, Healing with Vibrational Sound Therapy, and Electric Body, Electric Health. Eileen is also the inventor of the revolutionary and much-loved tool, the Sonic Slider, the creator of a line of tuning forks and accessories, and the CEO of BioSona, LLC, which provides sound therapy and training globally. So today, thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you for joining me. And I would like you to share what really is the biofield.
Hi, Paige. Thanks so much for having me in your wonderful summit. The term biofield was coined in 1994 by a team of National Institute for Health scientists who wanted to come up with a scientific phrase for what in esoteric literature is called the aura, or the human energy field. So it's essentially the field of energy and information that surrounds the body. But through my own work and research, I've evolved that definition as I've come to see that the body has an electrical system. And this is all the electric current that runs through you that powers your heart and your brain and is in your blood and your bones and your fascia and really across every cell membrane. Our body runs on electricity. Anything that has an electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. So when I use the term biofield, I'm using it to refer to the body's electrical system in its entirety. You can't really separate the field from the current within.
Got it. Yeah. So in terms of healing, how getting your understanding of the human biofield and understanding that our body is electric, how has that changed your trajectory in your career? Because I actually have been reading your book, The Electric Body, Electric Health, that I'm going to put up here. And yeah, so I'm just really curious, like once you came across this understanding, how did that transform your field in terms of healing others?
Well, it really transformed everything, not just with healing others, but also with healing myself. Because I'd been on a journey of self-healing since I was 18, and I'd been trying all the things that we learn about in the world of solid, liquid, and gas. I'd written many, many books. I'd read, not written. I'd been to all kinds of seminars and taken all kinds of trainings. But I still was vaguely unhappy most of the time. I was dealing with a lot of chronic and low-level pain that sometimes became acute. I had terrible digestion. I was overweight. I was in debt. I was fighting with my husband all the time. Like I wasn't fit and content and elevated despite all of my best efforts to get there. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, that you've tried and tried and tried, and yet you still are really getting nowhere. Uh,
Mhm.
Discovering the body's electrical system and discovering that it's really primary. When we're really looking at things from a chemical imbalance or trying to solve problems with food, we're not getting to the root of our issues, which is essentially resistance in our electrical system that creates tension and inflammation and imbalances in the body. So once I started to understand the electrical system working with my clients, and that it was my tuning forks in my sound therapy practice were interacting with the body's electrical system, I was finding these areas of resistance, of static, and the sound was actually helping to dissolve them, just like they use sound to break up kidney stones. So some of you may have heard of lithotripsy, which is where they send a sound wave into a kidney stone and it breaks it up and it makes it easier to pass. So
Mhm.
using sound in the body's electrical system had the same effect of breaking up this resistance, this tension, which is very often a consequence of some kind of trauma response. That
Mhm.
if we grew up in an environment that was violent or unpredictable or neglectful, many of us have had the experience, many of us who seek healing are dealing with all of this subconscious resistance in ourselves that's keeping us trapped in the same patterns and stopping us from expanding out into our full potential.
Yeah, I was reading your book and it was interesting. Like when you started working with the biofield, you mentioned that you would hear the sound change in different areas, and then you would like, I think it was like drop, pull, and you would move the energies. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah. So early on, I made interesting observations working with the tuning forks that really surprised me that I just didn't expect. I was self-taught. I got my first set of forks in 1996, and I started playing with them with some massage therapy clients I had. I was doing massage part-time. And from the beginning, they were just intriguing, which is why I've never put them down. I'm one of those people who tries and starts a lot of different things and then kind of forgets about them within a few days often. But the tuning forks have been so instructional and so fascinating that I've never abandoned them. So a few things that I noticed. One was that I thought that if you took a note of C, a tuning fork, which is produces an objective note of C, and you held it over and around the body, that it was always going to sound like a C. But that's not what happened. If I held it over an area where someone had sharp pain, it would sound sharp. If I held it over an area where somebody had a sense of weakness, it would go really low and quiet, or the sound would disappear really quickly. If I held it in another particular area, it would sound like it was full of static. But what was interesting was that if I continued to introduce it into these atonal areas, it was as if the body used that input to tune itself, because after a little while, it wouldn't sound atonal anymore. It would sound like a C again. And then people would express that they felt a resolution of whatever was ailing them. So that tonal quality that was having a conversation with the emissions of the body, right? Everything in the body is in motion. Everything in motion makes waves, and waves propagate. And we all have the experience of getting a good vibe off somebody or a bad vibe off somebody. And that's because we literally are feeling their vibes. And the tuning forks create almost like a wall of white noise that allows these inaudible emanations to become audible in the overtones and undertones of the tuning fork. It's really kind of fascinating.
Mhm.
The other thing that I discovered was that there were certain areas that I would find where the tone would go really loud and it would feel like there was almost something there, like there would be resistance.
Mm.
And curiously, I discovered that the tuning fork, the vibrating tuning fork, became like a magnet. And I could stick a fork in these loud areas. Like, let's say I found a loud area on someone's shoulder. Now, that very first set was all about the chakra system and chakras being energy centers. I
Mhm.
figured if it's going to be loud anywhere, it should probably be loud over the energy center. And we also have nerve plexuses in areas where there are chakras. So that would mean more activity going on in the body. So I invented what I call click, drag, and drop, which was
That's it. Click, drag, and drop. Yeah.
yeah, to stick the fork sort of in and on the loud spot. And then I discovered that I could drag it like a magnet moving iron filings and then drop it in the center. And then it wouldn't be loud over here anymore. It would be loud in the center. And so I developed early on this little practice of doing click, drag, and drop just right over the body. And afterwards, people would say, I feel really centered. And so I did that for years. But then one day in 2006, I accidentally discovered a loud spot about 3 feet off of somebody's body, like completely by accident. And when I moved that loud spot to the center, the person had a very dramatic healing. She'd been trying to get help from many modalities and hadn't. And then me randomly finding this loud spot 3 feet off of her neck and bringing it back to center got rid of all of her discomfort. So then I started to explore the area around the body
Mhm.
and discovered that there's actually a whole anatomy and physiology sort of hidden in plain view around our bodies. We carry our own little cloud storage system in a magnetic bubble around our body that holds our memories and holds our memories in a very specific format. Just like your digestive tract is in these different anatomy and physiology, and we all kind of have the same one. It's the same with our subtle anatomy. Our magnetic field anatomy is the same from person to person.
I thought it was interesting when I was reading your book, you talked about as you went away from the center of the body that you could tell like what happened maybe 30 years in time. Let's say, the field's 6 feet or so, that you could literally like look at the age of the person and figure out time wise when possibly a trauma or an incident could have happened.
Yeah. So in this model, our memories aren't stored in our brain. They're stored in our body's electrical system in standing waves. And if you think about it, everything that we see and smell and touch and taste and think and feel and experience is all recorded as an electrical signal in the body. So it makes sense that our memories are in our electrical system. What I discovered is that they are held in standing waves in the magnetic field around our body. And as we generate that signal of our daily experience, it moves away from us, kind of like hair, right? It grows and moves away from us. Now, most people's field extends around 6 feet in every direction. Information that I find at the outer boundary, because there's a membrane there. When we think about auras or energy fields, I think that there's a tendency to think that it just becomes sort of more diffuse as it goes out, but that's not what I discovered with my sonic exploration, sort of like sonar. With the tuning forks, I discovered that there was an actual membrane or boundary, and that the field is actually shaped like a torus. So it's sort of
Mhm.
a bubble with a central channel down the middle.
Mhm.
And so information from gestation was in that double layer membrane, and then just inside that birth. And then using a tuning fork, when I do a Biofield tuning session, it's kind of like dropping a needle on an album and reading the vibrational record of a person's life. So if
Mhm.
somebody's 60, I'm going to find information that was generated when they were 30, about 3 feet away. And this is very consistent. Like even people who've done their first training and go work on their first practice body are able, through this approach, to find in the person's memory banks their biggest traumas, that they're present, because as the tuning fork is reading that vibrational record, it's going to reflect the highs, the lows, the car accidents, the moves, the abandonments, all of it's like a song of your life. And we're going through and actually tuning it, so helping the body to take out the highs and the lows and the sharps and the flats, as the body wants to be in harmony, and given the opportunity to tune itself, it will. So when we hold a tuning fork in a very specific discordant memory, you can hear the song of that experience, and the body's organizing intelligence hears it as well and uses that input to to relax, essentially, because all of those old traumas have created a kind of tension in us that lives on. And because it's in the electrical system, that noise is just there and we're in that tension. But when we have the opportunity to, it's sort of like turning off a car alarm that's been going off in the background that you might be holding tension against. And then the body relaxes, and then you can breathe more freely. And then the energy that was held in that resistance is now in circulation and becomes available to you to go bust that pile of clutter or to finish that project that you haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, I appreciate this so much. I think many people now in the mental health field are coming across the book, like the body keeps score. And essentially this is like, you know, again, looking at the physical anatomy, but there really is this, like you said, this electrical, vibrational sound aspect to our being that people can look at it from the physical point, but it's hard when we get more into what looks esoteric. But what I appreciated about your book is that you came more from a scientific, curious mind. Like even in the book, you said that that you've always wanted to see the science, like you've always wanted to appreciate and understand things to validate them. So it's very interesting that you were able to stumble upon this objectively. And so because this summit, is about, taking this ancient wisdom and the modern science, can you just explain the science around it a little bit more to help people who are like listening to this first time and thinking, how could this possibly be?
Well, very often when people hear tuning forks and energy fields, we've been very conditioned by Rockefeller medicine, be like, oh, that's pseudoscientific nonsense, and dismiss it. But
Mhm.
when you get past that and you start to pay attention and understand what's going on here, everybody says the same thing. This makes sense. This
Mhm.
makes sense. Right? So this is very basic science that everybody already knows. We
Mhm.
know that anything that has an electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. We know that magnetic fields guide and inform electric currents. So when I'm using a tuning fork, a vibrating tuning fork produces a weak electromagnetic charge, especially attached to my electromagnetic body. So what we're essentially doing is we're finding areas of resistance, of inflammation. Everybody understands inflammation. Why are you hot in an inflammation? Because your electrical system's jammed up there. You got a little electrical traffic jam going on. Anything that's going on in the electrical system is going on in the magnetic field. So we can find that magnetic jam up in the field, and then we can magnetically manipulate the magnetic field, which is going to change the way that the electric currents are moving in the body. And so
Mhm.
this is all science we learned in grade school about basics of electromagnetics. Uh, Another principle, basic physics principle that the tuning forks operate with is resonance and entrainment. So a tuning fork will initially resonate with whatever distortion is present. That's what allows it to be diagnostic, if you will, how we can find certain areas and determine if it's pain or tension or what's going on there. Anxiety, depression, all of these things are tonal and rhythmic patterns in the body's electrical system. However, a strong coherent signal will entrain a weak incoherent signal into coherence. So the tuning fork initially resonates with the weak incoherent signal, but then it's a tuning fork and it's loud and I keep striking it and it is essentially coherent. And so the body will relax its incoherence and entrain to the coherent expression of the tuning fork. So that's again something really basic that we all understand. We all know that music moves us, right? Whether it's, you're at the grocery store and they're playing a good funk set, or whether you're really sad and you're listening to a sad song and it's pulling that emotion out of you. Sound moves us, it moves our electric bodies. And so tuning forks, any kind of sound healing really, is working at that level of that electrical system. And I would say that our electrical system is what we call our mind, with conscious and subconscious mind. It holds all of our memories, it holds our ancestral information. And I would even go so far as to call it our soul, because it is essentially your light body. And part of the reason why it has been obscured from our understanding, now, it was known in the early 1900s and probably before in our culture that our body had an electrical system. You could buy devices for your electric health through the Sears and Roebuck catalog. There were all kinds of devices. There was already an understanding that the body had an electrical system.
Mhm.
However, basically, the American Medical Association moved in with the Flexner Report in the early 1900s and eliminated all of their competition from the marketplace and drove education into this chemical mechanistic model where
Mhm.
if something goes wrong with your chemical mechanical body, you need a pill or surgery.
Mhm.
So we've all been indoctrinated into that perspective on health. Even people who are wanting to eat clean and think that the solution is in diet. The issue is really fundamentally with tension. It has to do with tension. We've all been contracted and traumatized and told no and hurt and wounded into a state of contraction. All of the celery juice in the world is not going to necessarily get you to relax and expand. Being uptight and neurotic about how clean you're eating is absolutely not maybe the solution that you're looking for, right? When we start to understand the electrical system and work with that, healing actually becomes much easier.
Yeah, a few things have come up as I've been listening to you. When you talk, well, just going back when we were talking about the distance of time when something happened, I like to think of like a tree trunk, and they say you can look at the age of a tree by the spirals that go out from the tree. And in Ayurveda, there's a pulse analysis, right? So we're feeling the heartbeat of somebody. And when we do a pulse analysis, we can feel the top of the pulse, which is the current moment or current state of time. And if you cut the pulse like all the way off down to where you don't feel it and slowly lift up, you can actually, just as you were saying with the tuning forks, pass through time to find somebody's current or at birth, what's considered their prakriti or their state of balance at birth to their vikriti, which is where they are at in time. But you can actually go through the pulse and feel the differences of the pulse, which is similar to what you're saying around the biofield. You can feel that through the pulse of the heart, which is also the vibrational frequency. Um, but as to go back to food and that, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, so I work with people in terms of looking at their whole, the whole mind, body, spirit complex. And what I tell people is everything is frequency, right? So whether it be sound, whether it be aromatherapy, whether it be our thoughts, whether it be touch, like whether it be everything has like an information about it. Color has a vibration, light has a vibration, sound has a vibration. So in Ayurveda, what we do is we just look like, does like increases like, or you can bring in the opposites and bring in opposite qualities. So it just really got me thinking reading your book because, I can now see after working my practice how important it definitely is when there's something more than just like a slight symptom, but when there's deep rooted symptoms in the body. A lot of times there was like a trauma or an emotional incident that happened back in history, and then all the symptoms started to come and play. Um, it's as if the rain barrel could no longer take anymore, and then all of a sudden everything outpours from it. So yeah, so in terms of working with the sound and the vibration and hearing it be louder in some areas, um, how did you begin to understand or track the body? Like you mentioned inflammation, pain, emotions. But were you just like in traditional Chinese medicine or in Ayurveda able to figure out specific, we have acupressure points, or in Ayurveda, they're called marma points. Were you able to fully identify and track where one emotion might be affecting a specific organ of the body through your work?
Yeah, and definitely, kind of surprisingly, and some of it really does line up with Chinese medicine, although I'm not educated in Chinese medicine and I didn't realize until after I made my own discoveries that that correlation was there. But
Mhm.
my biofield anatomy map goes into detail because what I discovered, and I think the first place I noticed this was the right hip, that I had a lot of clients come in with right hip pain. And what I discovered in all of them was that they had busy minds and busy bodies, and that they were sort of guilt driven overdoers.
Mhm.
And and without exception, like every person, like, well, you're super busy, you're staying busy because you feel guilty if you're not busy. And so you've created this imbalance in your own mind off of your right hip. You're piling up magnetic charge there by continually indulging this state of mind, and it's pulling the electricity in your body over to your right hip. You have too much voltage running through those wires, and you have pain because you're mentally imbalanced in this way. I
Mhm.
also noticed that everybody that had left shoulder pain was carrying undigested sadness, that they might be depressed or just had a whole bunch of sadness that they hadn't expressed. I'm like, wow, every time we feel sad, that record gets laid down off the left shoulder. The right shoulder has a tendency to say yes when we mean no, to be an accommodator, to be a caregiver, a caretaker, which there's nothing wrong with caretaking, but when we do it when our body says no, we become resentful. And so people who were experiencing resentment around taking care of other people were ending up with right shoulder issues. And so on through the body. Certainly anger showing up in the liver, along with our relationship with our father. Powerlessness showing up in the spleen, along with our relationship with our mother. Victimhood, feeling like a powerless, frustrated, disappointed victim off the left hip, right? So, and that this was consistent from person to person to person. Even if they had had a car accident, they would tend to end up with an injury wherever their field was the weakest, wherever they had the greatest imbalance in their electrical system.
In Ayurveda, there's a concept called kavya guna, which means once there's a weakness within the body, then that's where whenever you have a tendency towards, like you just mentioned, whether it be victimhood or sadness or depression or anger, the kavya guna will become like a memory or storehouse so that you could clear the field, right? But then when that re-arises or gets triggered, then it'll go back to the kavya guna, which is essentially kind of what you're saying. So when people have done the tuning forks, and let's say they've cleared something, do they have like this concept of a kavya guna that like when something arises or re-triggers it, do you see that people revert back, or do you see that it's like they're good to go, they leave and it's totally resolved, or do you find that there's sometimes this like revert back and needing like another tune up, if you will?
Well, it's kind of like chiropractic, right? We do, it's essentially what we do is we call them adjustments, that we
Uh-huh.
find places that are stuck and out of balance and we help free them up and adjust them back into neutral. Now, have you ever been a chiropractor once, been put back in and stayed good for the rest of your life? Like they wouldn't be in business, if that was the case, because stress and pressure is going to cause us to blow our stress valves, and we're going to go out just like your neck goes out when you're under stress and you got to go to the chiropractor to get it put back in again.
Mhm.
Or I started seeing a chiropractor who adjusted my atlas, and when I first went, it held for like a week and then it went back out again, and it took like 3 or 4 times for my body to get in the habit of that staying in alignment, right? So tuning is the kind of the same way. There's a saying, I think, acupuncture treatment does no good if you leave office and get hit by bus.
Yeah,
So
something's going to happen in the future it's not in necessarily your control, but you can definitely control your response once
yeah.
it.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And this is what it's really all about, is learning to control our responses. Because I can work on your right hip, your inner critic, your tendency to like beat yourself up into doing more and more. And I can spend all this energy and time kind of giving you an adjustment that you can put back out again with a thought.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's really about training you to use your mind to stay in integrity, to
Mhm.
not go off into worrying about the future, to not go back into beating yourself up because you did things wrong in the past, to not, you know what I mean? To practice gratitude instead of worry. Like it, this is what's going on because it's your mind. Now, are there old things that I can correct? that will stay corrected. Yeah, very often, like a birth trauma, once that resolves, it stays resolved. So there are definitely certain adjustments that will hold. But if we're doing an adjustment on your bad habits of mind, maybe that you even inherited, this has been going on for generations, it's going to take some time to start to repattern that and make it so that you're not generating the imbalance in the first place,
Mhm.
right? I'm not healing you, I'm helping you to learn to stay healthy.
Mhm. Yeah. So it was still interesting. I'm still just thinking about all the things that you said because I'm just so trained in the science of Ayurveda. When you were talking about the aura, the auric field, there's there's a reason I'm bringing this up because it comes to my next question. But in Ayurveda, there's considered what's called the five koshas, or they're the five bodies. And the first kosha or layer of our being is the physical body. And then the next layer of our being is the breath body that we work with, and then the third layer is the mind body. But the fourth layer is like the astral body. It's the you're speaking of the aura, but that in Ayurveda is where we have a subconscious mind, or these patterns that that we're talking about, like if there's something that's really, really deep rooted in our consciousness, whether it be like ancestral or from our family or from early childhood wounds, then that would be stored there in our emotional body sheath. So which brings me to the question of when you're using tuning forks, I know that you're addressing the vibrational field, and it's like a chiropractor connection, but how do you see the tuning forks in terms of like mind, body, spirit healing?
Well, I don't differentiate. In a way, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Your body is the temple that your spirit is animating. Okay, so your you-ness is really what is enlivening the clay, the earth of the physical body. It's all gradients of density, but it's all life force.
Mhm.
So it's, and also, I would say when I'm saying this is electrical, this is the same thing that chi or prana. It's just that, like, with the Eastern perspective, there's a recognition of the gradient, the denser and more gross, and then the more subtle aspects of the life force.
Mhm.
Right? It's a spectrum of density and fineness.
Mhm.
uh, but it's all, I'm here in this body, this is all one. This is all one. And in this model, my body is inside my mind and not the other way around. So my mind, the health of my mind and the balance of my mind, the discipline of my mind, the righteousness under the great central sun, and my ability to be in my own integrity is going to radiate out into all the bodies. So, so I think that, we all have this tendency to want to like compartmentalize and put nouns on things,
Mhm.
that are actually processes and spectrums, but they're unified.
Yeah. So how do you see, in terms of working with the tuning forks, how do you see, because again, I'm just bringing in the different themes to the summit, how do you see that they can really biohack the body, you know, in terms of really, you talked about like you have to correct your mind, but how do you see this really biohacking the body?
Well, one of the ways that I biohack the body is with this fork that I invented called the Sonic Slider. And this is a weighted tuning fork. These are weights. This is the handle. It has a very long handle. A lot of tuning fork handles are much shorter than this, but this has a very long handle. And I created this with the intention of rejuvenation and relaxation for self, because my practice was always very oriented on others. Born of completely of vanity, getting to the age where you start wanting miracles. And I'm not a Botox kind of gal, but certainly vain. So I invented this fork that you actually slide on yourself. And after just a week or two of using the prototype, people were in Zoom meetings and they were like, Eileen, what did you do to your face? I was like, aha. And then when I started using it on the body, I actually lost a whole bunch of water weight. I didn't realize that I had all these fascia knots that were prohibiting fluid flow, because I spent a lot of my childhood in, a lot of contraction. Um, and that had created all of this fascia bunching all through my body. And so when I started to rub this, with firm pressure all over my body, it came out all in bruises, and then lost a whole bunch of water weight. And then I also discovered that it tones muscles as well. So that's just one way to, as far as biohacking your body so that you feel and look healthier. It just induces a flow state. This is where we want to get to physically, mentally, emotionally, is this place of flow. And so the sonic slider used on your body helps your blood, your lymph, your fascia, your fluids, like everything to flow better, and you feel better. Like definitely people report that their energy increases, that their mood improves. Many people have been using it on their digestive tract, adding tone and energy to the digestive tract, and discovering that it's reducing food sensitivities and improving the strength of their digestion. So, and that's just one way. I mean, people use it to treat pain, anxiety. It helps settle you down. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a practice, I don't know if you know this in Ayurveda. First of all, like there's dry brushing, which you're saying is like moving the lymph daily. Like when it gets stagnation, it is the sewage side of our body. So it's like if that sewage is getting like just getting piled up, it's like you're not taking the trash out daily. So like you said, that's like one layer of daily personal care. And then there's a concept called abhyanga, which is self-massage, but it is what you're doing. Like you're using friction with your hands to massage oil into your body, but the slider's like doing that same thing. It's just like moving the blood, which is the same concept, as well as the nervous system is getting soothed through that process. So it just reminds me of these practices of dry brushing, of daily abhyanga use, but you're using the sound to enhance or carry the prana, the chi, the life force forth in the body, which is also reminds me of like on the face, like gua sha, or using gemstones again, but you're using the slider sound and resonance. We have quite a lot of lymphatic system and drainage that happens in our face as well as, our neck. So you showed that as well. So I got one for my birthday, and it was the reason I invited you on the summit. I do marma therapy, which is like an acupressure, acupoint therapy, which is again why I asked about like the organs of the body and the points. And so I do marma therapy with massage with my hands. And I was actually in North Carolina, and a friend had COVID. She was 14 days out, but she was still having difficulty breathing, and was really suffering with her breath. And so I was like, look, I'll do marma therapy, but she had a set of the tuning fork. And I said, look, like, I'll just go ahead and use these on the points. I was very clear on what parts would work on the lungs and the heart. And she had been suffering, for over 2 weeks, just couldn't breathe, couldn't get out of bed. Like just every time she'd get a little bit of energy and then like be back down. And so I was able to use your tuning fork without ever having used it before, but just knowing the points that relate to the heart and knowing where to work on her lungs. And within one session, like I left the next day, came back to Louisville, Kentucky, and within one session, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm up, I'm going, like, this is amazing. And so I was like, okay, it's time that I integrate the tuning forks into my practice. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of curiosity for me personally, in playing with them because I have that Vedic science, like traditional, it's not traditional Chinese medicine, but Ayurveda of 108 vital energy points. Like you spoke of the chakras, but the marmas are like mini chakras. So there's the chakras that people are all familiar with, but then like you said, what makes these marma points like so vital, just like the chakras being nerve plexi points, is that it's where joints, ligaments, fascia, the blood, they're highly like charged superhighway areas where all these things meet. And just like you said with the slider, like if you know where these points are, right, and just like you've tracked the biofield, then it would make sense that if you have a lot of joints, ligaments, tissue, bone, cartilage, blood pumping through these areas that if you were to use the forks on those or to even slide it, then you would be able to move the prana or the chi. So I just got super excited to integrate it into my practice. And so it brings me to another question I have for you, which is like you've tracked the what you call the biofield in the body. Do you train people, or I know you sell the sonic slider, but do you actually offer trainings to help people learn how to integrate and use the tuning forks?
Yeah, we've been training people since 2010. So we
Yeah.
actually have hundreds of practitioners, thousands of students all around the world. And currently, all of our training is online. So we were doing it all in person. We were traveling around the world. And then 2020 changed that. So now, yeah, you can become a certified biofield tuning practitioner in the comfort of your own home. And our training does have one-on-one practice. So we want to make sure, with tuning forks, it's easy to think that you're doing the right thing and you're holding it like this, but really you're supposed to be holding it like that. And so we
Mhm.
make sure that everybody gets one-on-one training as well. So yeah, it's a really, really great practice to add. Like you said, if you've already got a skill set, it can really augment it. It really makes everything work even better. It's sort of been our experience, and it fits in well with massage, with any other kind of sound healing, with Reiki, with chiropractic, pretty much anything that you do as a provider to help people, even coaches and psychotherapists and people
Mhm.
that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Certainly with the sonic slider, estheticians, anybody who does any kind of stuff like that. But you've got one with the boot, right? And that actually can be used to help heal tissues as well. So anybody who's doing like physical therapy, any kind of sports massage, the tuning forks are just super, super helpful to just get people to feel better, right? That's why we do what we do, because we want to help people to feel better. And the tuning forks and they're easy. You can carry them around in your backpack or your purse. It's not like singing
Yeah,
bowls,
it's like in this
yeah.
nice bag.
Yeah.
When you were working with the tuning forks, like when did you actually create the sonic slider? When did this with the slider tuning fork come out?
So I created it. I created a handful, I think 6 different prototypes, because I had it in my head. I knew what I wanted it to do and I knew how I wanted it to make me feel.
Mhm.
And I've created tuning forks before. I was already had a Fibonacci pair that are weighted forks that are based in the Fibonacci sequence. I had a Schumann pair based in the Earth's natural resonance that makes a 7.83 binaural beat. So I'd already invented, a few things that we were using. And so just fiddling around with numbers, with sacred geometry, with the Schumann resonance, I created a bunch of ones. And I knew, like, you can tell, like, not all vibrations are created equal. I knew the moment that I created this one, like that I used this prototype, that it was what I was looking for. And that was August of 2017. And I used it for a few months to make sure whenever I create a fork, I hand it out to a bunch of people and I'm like, okay, try this, use it, see what you notice before I bring it to market. So we brought it to market early in 2018, and we've sold thousands of them. Like, people really love them. It's such an accessible tool. And it helps settle people down, even if you're feeling anxious or upset, just putting it, you don't even need to know specific points, you can just be like, oh, put it on your sternum, just a few minutes with it on your sternum can help you to just relax and breathe more freely. So
Yeah, so you said when you created it, you knew what were the qualities that it had that was like, okay, I know that this is it. This is the right tuning fork.
well, this is the 12th harmonic of the Schumann resonance. Okay, so this is 7.83 times 12. I also created the 11th and the 13th. Okay, so the 11th is completely deadening. Like, when you use it, you just feel sort of sad and dead inside, like, ugh, like we're going to a funeral kind of feeling. The 13th was completely neurotic. It was just kind of like, all over the place. They're like, oh my God, get that fork away from me. Like, that's the last
Mhm.
thing I want to feel. It's sort of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This one is too
Mhm.
hard. This one's too soft. This one is just right. So
Yeah.
there's something about the 12th, and it is through the contrast of these other frequencies that are not good that we recognize what is good. Right. And I've been working with sound for a long time now. So they gotta have an instant knowing of like, oh yeah, that's it, versus like, oh no, that's definitely not it.
Have you found at times though that those other frequencies would work for some individuals?
I mean, they probably would, but not, I don't like feeling them. I mean, as for me as the provider, like I gotta enjoy what I'm doing. I don't want to wield, because I did an adjustment on somebody with, that was part of my exploring with them was, okay, let me do an adjustment with you. And we were all like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really what brought the most relaxation or state of calm and clarity and maybe focus and just a general sense of ease.
Yeah, exactly. And it's evident. And you could give those three forks to anybody and be like, which one feels the best to you? And everyone would say this one. And it's sort of like a universal thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, before we end, is there any one area of your work you'd like to share that we didn't cover today that you really want to share with the audience before we end?
Well, a couple things come to mind. One is that what I've discovered through this work is that every single one of you is brilliant, is amazing, is a genius, is gifted. And you all know that, right? Everybody knows that they have genius and gift and potential inside of them. And most people struggle in some way or another to get there, largely are sabotaged by the false belief that you're not worthy of the greatness and the gifts that God has given you. And that not worthy story has been inoculated into us through the story of original sin, through school, through the media, right? It's reinforced over and over and over again so that we may not even realize the degree of the tension that we're holding against the life force itself through the false belief of not being worthy. So, tuning helps to release those illusions and those false beliefs and those restrictions that are stopping you from expanding into the full potential of who you are, like releasing that. Like you already have everything you need inside of you. You just need to relax, basically. And most importantly, to notice when you're telling yourself stories that are making you feel guilty or not good enough, because that is your biggest enemy to health and healing, is not feeling worthy of being all that you are, right? So I just really want to underscore the fact that humans are amazing and that
Yeah.
you are amazing and that it's okay to say yes to your gifts. Like we're waiting for you to say yes to your gifts and to share them with the world.
Yeah, I love that. Just bringing, like you said, just bringing yourself into your own resonance. Like when you own who you are, then you're in a state of flow. When you aren't honoring that sacred part of yourself, if you're not allowing it, then you're blocking your essence. You're not allowing it to be in its fullness.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
shine, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what we're all really built for.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I just wanted to share is that I also do work with the voice and
Mm.
liberating the voice because it's by
Yeah.
our word that we create our life. And
Yeah.
many people are very shut down in their ability to freely express themselves,
Oh, thank you. Yes, I
right?
love that. So you work with the voice, and do you use like tuning with the voice? Like how do you do that in your practice?
Well, I co-created this program called Sing the Body Electric with
Mm.
these two Australian brothers, Isaac and Torald Corin. And so we do workshops and training in this process that we created. Basically, we discovered that there's a whole sonic anatomy. Just like I discovered the biofield anatomy, we discovered this sonic anatomy where different tones resonate in different areas of the body. And so we lead people through these series of exercises that essentially gets you to sound from every part of your body and gets your voice connected to the totality of your being, so that when you make sound, when you speak, you're speaking from the fullness of yourself. And then that leads to you creating a more full life. Many of us are like pipe organs, where like this pipe is rusty and this one's shut down and this key isn't working. And we've all just been diminished by life, but we're all really magnificent, unique instruments that all have our own beautiful song to sing. And so this process, you can learn about it at singthebodyelectric.com. And we do virtual and in-person workshops with that too.
Yeah, I love this. I was listening on Resonance, and they were actually able to create a technology that by listening to the voice for just 2 or 3 minutes of recording, the technology could actually diagnose COVID, because they were able to see that there was a specific frequency of what that one virus sounded like through the voice. So by, again, not just using tuning forks, but using your own voice, you can begin to heal your own body. And again, in Ayurveda, they're called bija mantras, or they're seed sounds. And those seed sounds have a frequency that you can work with each of the different chakra systems to correct any when the body's not in resonance. You become your tuning fork through your own voice, if you will. Is that how you see it? Like your body can't be a tuning fork?
Yeah, absolutely. So between the two, getting tuned from the outside and then tuning yourself from the inside, right? This is a recipe for whole health. So,
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you said that, because I've been saying with Bija Mantras, you can become your own tuning fork. I tell my clients that. And so I'm glad that you validated it being more of a sound healer than myself. So, well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And before we go, I just have one more thing. I'm letting every speaker offer, if they want, it's not required, a free gift or a promotional code for the summit. It's not required, but if you want, I'll share it.
well, in this moment on the spot, I don't know, but I will provide something and we'll
Yes.
figure that out, because I'd love to, help all of you guys to find your way towards greater health and with whatever I've got to help you with.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Paige.